Greetings, manager. It marks 3 days now that you have worked here. The number 3 is a mysterious one. In age-old fables, it is common for a mysterious entity to appear and tell the protagonist to utter 3 wishes. Sadly, I am not a mage or a billionaire that can grant your wishes, the 2 wish-granting entities. However, I do happen to know what your predecessors wished for. There were many aspirations, common among them was seeking of some kind of growth. To lead the company to prosperity, to achieve spiritual maturity, you name it. Each had wanted to flower in a different way. Which of these 2 would you want? I wish to mature my spirit, if you know what I mean. Come to think of it, there was another manager who gave me such an answer. As you know, spiritual is a rather obsolete term in today's world. So I asked him for the definition of spirit, and that manager told me, well, I unfortunately do not recall the details of that conversation. Even an AI cannot store every bit of data. Unnecessary information should be deleted for smooth operation. So what she's saying is that she didn't know what I mean. So, you may be asking yourself if your predecessors managed to fulfill their wish. I suppose what happened to the others is not important after all. I do promise to cheer on for the journey to the final goal, though. You did it again, and you did it flawlessly, too. I myself have a lot of work to do. If you look at my notebook, my to-do list is always so full. But I know I can get through it. I should do my best, like I always have. I know I'm slower than the others. I always have to check my list or I'll miss something important. That's why I have this notebook with me all the time. Can't leave any mistakes, you know. I've been carrying it for so long that it's almost worn out. It's been with me ever since I began working here as a Sephiriah of the control team. I know Lady Angela worries about me from time to time, but I've got everything under control. I feel like this is the kind of life I've been learning for ever since a long, long time ago, maybe even before I was capable of thinking. It feels as if I've wished for the same thing before, in some other place that wasn't the control team. Malkuth, please finish the report I requested by the end of today. Sure thing, boss. I've got it right here on my list. I'll have it turned in by the end of today. Well, I should get going now. It's a pleasure talking to you, manager. The AIs here, they're all unstable, with the exception of me. It's especially bad for Malkuth. You've noticed, haven't you? I can't complain though, it only makes it easier for me to control her. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Lobotomy Corporation. Last time we finished up another one of Malkuth's missions, and our goal for this episode is trying to be difficult because this mission requires the day to go pretty long. Yesterday we finished pretty much everything we had to do in until Meltdown level 2, but this time we have to make it to at least like 4, just because our goal is to complete 8 work presses under things that are currently melting down. So it'll probably make the day a bit longer, which is going to be a bit difficult because we just picked up a test that can breach, and I'm not sure we can handle its breach right now. To help deal with the test, we are probably going to produce 2 of the penitent suits, just because they have a 0.9 to black and a 0.8 to white, so 2 types of damage it will do, as you'll hear when I get into more detail about it later. I can't even make anything for Fairy Festival. But after that, just go through the day as normal and hope no one dies. And of course, there are also 2 employees to add from form submission. First, I'm going to manufacture these 2 suits, and I'll give one to me. I'll give another one to one of the new employees. And there we go, 3 new employees added. Of course, I only did a field 2 today, but that's how the cookie crumbles. This is what happens when you submit the form slightly later, I guess. You don't get to probably die. Alright, so let's start management for the day. Fragment of the Universe is a Teth abnormality that does black damage. That means that it damages both HP and SP with every tick of its damage. Which means that if you don't have enough HP or SP stat, you'll panic or die. Depending on which hits 0 first. Obviously. It's also the first abnormality we have with a Quilthoth counter, which means that above its containment unit there is a circle with a number in it. That number can decrease by getting a normal result on occasion. It's very likely to decrease on getting a bad result, and if an employee panics while working on it, it automatically decreases. And when that counter reaches 0, it breaches, becoming a suppressible entity with 230 HP. While it's in that state, it will target employees in the same room and attack them with its tentacles, doing black damage, or it will stop and sing, doing white damage to everything in the room. This is highly dangerous for the point of the game we're at, but not by the end game. Several Teth entities are like this. There are a couple that will go back and continue on their own, but this is not one of them. To go back and you must defeat it in combat, which our facility can do, but it's very difficult, especially without anyone dying. Its best work rates are in attachment and repression at low levels, but it also is decent at attaining insight at low levels if you're willing to risk it escaping, just because it does white damage. I prefer using it solely for attachment, especially right now, because it escaping is not something we can deal with. Its armor and gift are both pretty mediocre, but its armor is just worth noting that because it's Teth, it is just slightly better than the Zayn armor, even though its defenses are not as great in red. I'll still probably equip it over the Zayn armor, and there's not really that much does black damage, literally only this right now. However, its weapon is pretty dang good in my opinion. 5 to 9 black damage with fast attack speed from a medium range already. It'll fall off later on just because its Teth and the damage multipliers are not great on Teth weapons. Teth attacking a left is like a 0.6 times damage penalty or something like that. Other than that, it's pretty simple. Just if it escapes, you have to deal with it and just hope it doesn't. That's it. And with that, let's actually start the day again. So this is the first day that actually took me multiple tries in Lobotomy Corp. This playthrough. The first attempt I just tried to play through normally, which would involve getting the research done on Fragment of the Universe as fast as possible. But right now, we only have the 2 suits, which I gave to myself and Marie from Splatoon. So they're the only ones who can safely work it. They might, as you might have seen in the footage earlier, the other ones with the black weak default suits have a lot of trouble surviving even like a couple hits from it, and its best work rate is only 60% success, so it's not great. Another thing that's not great is that you can't tell right now, but if I remember correctly, the Quilthoth counter already decreased at this point of the day. It's not even visible right now. Goom immediately got a normal work result, and so we're already working with 1. Because again, its Quilthoth counter is 2. If you fail at its conditions twice, it's breaching, and it breaching is probably going to mean a restart of the day, because I don't see myself beating it without losing anyone yet. Maybe if we had all of its armor, I could set everyone on his armor to fight it, but even then, they're still weak to its singing, because its singing does white damage. On all the attempts consistently, I was kind of shuffling around Mr. Black, Christopher, and B, because they didn't have armor between Fairy Festival and working Onsen on Insight. Onsen's best rate is attachment, but it's also serviceable in Insight, as I probably said earlier. I've just switched it to Insight because Fragment of the Universe is so much better for attachment than it. Also, if I get their HP and SP high enough on the next day, because they'll be able to work with Fragment soon, it should make working with Fragment a lot less risky, because having higher HPSP will hopefully prevent it from causing fatalities when it breaches. The secondary goal I had for this day was that I wanted to get all of the weapons and equipment off of one sin. Fairy Festival stuff isn't quite as good just because it's not good. Like, its armor resists less black, which we need for Fragment of the Universe in exchange for 1.1 more red. And while red defense is slightly better for the early game, because I said earlier during the bio, there's not much that does black damage in the early game. I just wouldn't want to be wearing Zayn armor when I'm facing a dangerous red damage stuff anyway. So I'd rather get one sin's armor. But additionally, Fragment of the Universe while breaching is weak to white and pale, but pale is super rare, and so the only source that we have for white damage is one sin's weapons. And then also if anyone panics over the course of the day, it's just nice to have white damage weapons, which you do not have right now. So I was just trying to play the... This is about the speed I normally play the game at. You can see that I just keep the game on fast forward at all times, pretty much, once that's unlocked. But other than that, it's a pretty safe day, other than just having to deal with Fragment of the Universe. And normally you wouldn't have something... If you're trying to play super safe, you probably wouldn't even take a breacher at this point. And normally you wouldn't even have to go this late on this day earlier. I'm just trying to get this mission done as fast as possible. The one thing I don't know is I don't know if this mission actually counts your progress over the course of multiple days or just all in one day. I've never figured it out. I'm not great at testing stuff like that because I'd rather get it done immediately. But progress is pretty slow because we only have one thing melting down at once for a while, and we need to get works done on 8 things that are currently under a meltdown. So that work I ordered on one sin is just one of those. And I believe it's maybe though... No, it's the one after this. Because at this point, my strategy was just to work with Fragment normally. I was not treating it differently from the other ones, which maybe I should have been. I was just having Marie and Goom work on Fragment, and basically just whoever was at higher HP and SP would just have to work on it when I decided they were ready. But this is not the successful attempt, as I stated earlier. Soon, Fragment breaks out. I believe it's after this work. It's because it's coming up soon. And it does not go well for my facility. As I stated in the bio, Fragment's pretty dangerous in the early game. Especially this early into the game, where my best armor is literally Penitence, which has, I believe, a 0.9 or a 0.8 to black. It's not great. Even though it just got more likely that success will happen, it went from a 60 to a 65, I believe, without taking the work or success stats into account. I thought I was actually home free at this point, just because of that, but it's really just RNG when you're working, and sometimes you just get bad rolls. It's not very great when you have something you just really shouldn't be letting break out, and I really should have treated it differently on my first attempt. I just kind of hoping I could beat it just through playing good. But I really wanted its weapon just because I was saying it was so good earlier. And I believe it'll definitely do a lot of, probably be one of my best weapons for a while, at least in the early game. Do a lot of carrying on whoever has it. Damn, I did not realize how long I went working on it. I actually came really close to getting the update on. Oh well. Just FYI, if a containment unit that is melting down and has a cool off counter gets to melt down completely, the abnormality breaks out no matter what. Or whatever happens in the cool off counter reaches 0 happens no matter what. It just treats it as if it hit 0. Which, there are a couple abnormalities that are very difficult to lower cool off counters, so if you're not paying attention to them, it because they're not working on them and they melt down, you'll be in trouble. That's why a really good strategy when things start melting down is just to pause immediately and just see everything that melted down and then deal with it. And just make sure that you can't miss things like that happening. It's not really that easy. It's pretty hard to miss things right now though, and everything's just in the one area. Because they have the one department. And now it's time for our very first trumpet. Because Fragment broke out finally. I thought that happened a lot earlier into the day. I am not very good at remembering what literally just happened. So what I did to try to defeat it was I gathered all the employees and I ordered them to attack. And what I should have done was I should have done this from the suppression menu, because that way we would have been able to more easily retreat. We already had me go insane, I believe, and die. So that's already one employee down. They weren't even healing because they weren't in the main room, but I was just like, whatever, it's a lost cause by this point. And it sings its song and causes Christopher to go insane and kills him, and then B and Mr. Black and then Marie, and everyone's either dead or insane by this point, so the day's a wash. Luckily I can just retry the day, there's no real penalty for that. And so I went into attempt number 2. I personally, I like that the days get pretty tough, and I'm glad there's no penalty beyond just restarting, but this is the failure of day 2. The same thing happened again, basically. Don't want to subject you to watching basically the same footage again, so I just cut to when it escaped. This escape is notable because I follow my own advice of actually using the menu to suppress it. If somebody gets on low health, you can just click on their name in the menu and have them retreat from there. The reason why I selected them as a group is because I believe they were not sitting in the main room, so that if I set them to retreat, they wouldn't have walked back into it, and that's the only place that you can heal from. That's why I had them all retreat like that. And even though I was trying to play pretty safe, it still just does too much damage to the people wearing black weak armor. So Christopher died. We still have everyone else left. I was able to keep Marie from dying pretty conveniently, or luckily. But Mr. Black still goes insane and dies. And then the day just continues to spiral down. I was going to try to have myself retreat when I was at low health, but I still go insane. And we did actually suppress it successfully because my panic type was murder. And the first thing I saw to murder was it. But I still cut the day from there. And now this is cutting midway into the successful attempt of the day. So as you can see, it's basically just the same as all the unsuccessful attempts. A lot of what I cut out was just me working on it because you can't tell from the day 2 clip, but the person who failed at working with it, I believe both times, was Marie. So I was like, clearly she cannot be trusted. I'll do this myself. I just have myself work with it. I was being fairly cautious working on it, and I still probably worked on it a bit more than I should have, but it ended up working out successfully. There were actually 2 times during this day where I got a normal result without the counter decreasing at all, which was extremely lucky. But other than that, the day just was a pretty successful implementation of the same basic strategy, just with less working on him, Fragment, until later on. After I accomplished the mission, I felt a lot more secure working on Fragment because it was still at 2. So if I failed it at once, I could just end the day from there. But the day was already running kind of long. There's something else important that happened this day, but I don't remember if it's in the footage I cut out or not. I can just talk about it either way. But I believe it hasn't happened yet. I don't know, I even when I was playing it, I didn't even realize when it happened, because I was just... I had a lot of trouble deciding if I was going to work on it or not, as you can probably tell. Yeah, it already ruined 2 days for me. It was just a stressful situation. So what I mentioned that I didn't cut through earlier was that I got the gift from it. It's not very good, it's just a +2 to 2 stats. I also hit level 3 Temperance, and we had some other promotions too. Just a very nice day overall. First major gain in stats just due to having a test, and we're going a lot longer. A bit cut heavy, but that's what happens when you have 2 failures. I'll try to cut around better later on. And our 3 choices for today are T0985. Now everything will just be just fine. I really don't want this one, but I will take it if it lands on it. T0997, those are trade hard sinking the depths, so they've forgotten in the effort lengthening corridors of time. And T0994, many of those who underwent an operation into the machine have found themselves rested and healthy again. This is probably the best of the 3. Actually, no, this is definitely the best of the 3. But I'm pretty if I remember what this is, I'm pretty sure this one's also good, which is surprising that I got 2 good tools, considering most of them suck. All 3 of these are tools, because every 4th choice is between 3 tools, and that's the only time you can get tools. And I rolled a 2, so I'll take 97. And now it is time for fairy lore. The abnormality is similar to a fairy, having 2 pairs of wings and a small body. They act as a cluster. They use a language we cannot understand to communicate with each other. They follow a few employees around when they enter the containment unit, using their special abilities to help heal injuries. Employees call this act the fairies' care. The fairies protect our employees. If you often act out of the goodness of your heart and are a lover of nature, then the fairies will gladly take care of you. Everything will be peaceful while you're under the fairies' care. You can also enjoy the envious glances you'll get from the other employees. Not that it's important, but what if the fairies don't approach you? Then you should reflect on your life. When Emil and I took shifts entering the fairies' containment unit, the fairies did not hesitate to approach me. Only me, never towards Emil. You all know Emil and how he is. Why, just yesterday he refused to share his snacks with me, and he was acting all high and mighty. It is a sacred act to be predicted by fairies in any world. However, do not enter their containment unit just to have a bit of fun. If you've read a few books on them, you'll know that fairies dislike those who take advantage of their kindness. When Walter, who was under the care of the fairies, died in the room of another abnormality, we noticed some abnormalities. His stomach and face were ripped off, and his eyeballs and organs were damaged as if they were eaten by something. Moreover, the containment unit Walter was found in was for an abnormality that uses psychological attacks. Meanwhile, the fairies had someone's blood and flesh smeared all over their mouths. We did not bother to examine them to find out whose flesh and blood it was. In our world, there are few outcomes that result from perfect kindness. Having fairies that live in a forest visit you just because they like you or if you've done many good deeds is something that only happens in fairy tales. Even though we know this truth, we still sometimes become deluded, thinking that the fairies' care is happening because of the good deeds we've done, or that the fairies are favoring us because there is something that makes us more special than the other employees. The fairies are no more than carnivorous monsters, and their protection is the method to keep the meat fresh. When an employee enters another containment unit, they gobble them up in fear that they would lose their food to something else. However, the employees are greatly satisfied by the fairies' care, and we saw a drastic decrease in the accident rate, so we deemed it unnecessary to tell the truth to the employees. And that is fairy lore. What a beautiful story.